everyone. Welcome to another edition of Office Hours, a weekly live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping the military connect the community start their own business. We know that 25% of transitioning service members want to start a business, and they need a place inside their community where they can connect with the people, resources, and support they need. I'm your host, Iron Mike Stedman, joined by my co-host for today, Miss Amy Morrison and Jameson Avehall from the Bunker Labs marketing team. What's going on, Amy and Jameson?
Howdy.
Hey, what's going on, Mike? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For y'all that aren't aware, Jameson's a little bit of a mystery. Sometimes he doesn't really get in front of the camera, but we were able to pull him from behind the scenes today to drop some knowledge for everyone on a minimum viable audience. So it's going to be a good conversation today. But before we do that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Amy to talk about some events that are happening in the bunker this week.
Cool. Actually, no events this week, but I do want to plug Veterans and Residents. The next applications open September 1st. And we will also be having a Q&A live here on Office Hours on September 7th. So get your questions in and join us on the 7th for that. And then also, we are still asking people to participate in our Entrepreneur Insight Study. The link is in the chat. So yeah, if y'all could give us your insight on what's going on out in the real world, we can better serve your needs.
Can you briefly talk about that Entrepreneur Insight Study? Because I know a lot of us have been getting the emails about it and the phone calls. What's so important about that, and how does that help us as entrepreneurs?
So it's part 2. It's like the 2.0 of the study that we did last year. Last year we focused a lot on like the PPE and how entrepreneurs and small business owners were being affected by COVID and the different relief packages that were out there. This year we're following up on that, but more importantly than those kinds of like temporary or like, current situation stuff. It's more about getting a pulse on what's going on out in the real world, what's affecting the entrepreneurs in our community, and how can we help alleviate some of the challenges and hardships that entrepreneurs are facing. And specifically in our community, the veteran connected community has, unique challenges that they need to overcome, plus all the shit that's going on in the world on top of that. So,
I think one of the big takeaways from the last study was just the importance of connection, especially with the pandemic and people spread out all over the country, all over the world, and being isolated, that feeling of wanting to be around each other. And so one of the things that Bunker was able to really do was lean into these cohort-based programs. So, now we're able to run the CEO circle. We've already had veteran and residents going, right? We've got our ambassador cohorts going. So I think by having you all fill out this information for us, it really does give us an inside view on what kind of programming support you all are looking for as entrepreneurs.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we, to a certain extent, we can, change or pivot, certainly, like we did last year without having live events. Like we went to the virtual events and stuff like that. So yeah, we can. There's a lot we can do to help. We just need to know what's going on.
Yeah, so check out that insight study, fill it out for us, and help us create better programming for all of you out there. All right, now for the meat and potatoes of today, we're going to be talking about minimum viable audience with my man, Jameson. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is I have an opportunity to do a lot of the branding and marketing workshops for our workshop series. And consistently what comes up is everybody has a great venture, right? We've all got these great ideas, but at the end of the day, we all need to generate revenue. And to generate revenue, we need to get some marketing going and some traction. And when you're starting out, it can be so overwhelming because people don't know where to focus all their attention to, And so, I'm a big fan of Seth Godin. And in his book, This is Marketing, he talks about smallest viable market, which is also minimum viable audience. People throw these different names on it. And given Jameson's background with Whiskey Grade and his company founded and the work he's done here at Bunker, I mean, he's got an amazing story that he shared on the transition. And he literally built out a company starting out on, would you call it a blog, Jameson?
Yeah, it was really just an editorial blog that was just focused on content. And it was really to drive interest in a specific lifestyle that I was personally interested in, but I think people resonated pretty well with that.
And one of the things Jameson did was, and I think is very smart, particularly in today's age, was he really built an audience through that editorial blog. And that way, when he came out with his physical store, he already had an audience there. And so when you think about a lot of people that are looking to start like a brick and mortar shop or whatever, the old model was if you build it, they will come, which doesn't necessarily work. What you want to do is you want to build an audience first, and that way get some validation from the market. And that way, when you roll out your product or service, you already have an audience there that's able to benefit from it. So let's take it back, Jameson. Talk to us about, one, just give us a quick overview of your company, from
Mhm.
what became Whiskey Grade, right? And then let's talk into how you went about building those initial users or viewers of your content.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, for me, I was sort of creating content around a lifestyle that I was interested in, and it was mostly around motorcycles and clothing and how they tied really well together. I think particularly for like the crowd of people that wanted functional clothing. So I think that for me, I was starting to build content around other products, other people's products that I thought were relevant to that sort of audience. And it was really just stuff that I was personally interested in that I was posting online. And I think that I started to realize that there are others that are in the same realm as me and they share the same interests as me. And I guess that ties into like the minimum viable audience because particularly to like what you said, a lot of people will try to focus on the larger audience out there. And for me, I was only focused on the people that were just like me. I know that there weren't a lot of them, and there wasn't the mass, but I do know that there was people that shared very similar interests in me, and I just wanted to focus on them particularly. So, I did a lot of content creation, and I really started to collect or engage with other audience members. A lot of them would post about their particular opinion on a product. They would talk about maybe experiences that they had or that they were interested in purchasing, and then I would just continue posting things that I thought people would be into, and that was not my own stuff. So eventually, I got to a point where I wanted to create my own product, and I knew, and I started really collecting a lot of that data around what people actually liked on my blog. So if it was like a particular riding jacket, or if it was denim that had a specific function to it, I knew that through my audience, people were super interested in that. And so when I started looking at creating my own products, took that into account. It was almost like I was collecting that data just from the engagement that was happening.
Yeah, it sounds like you were doing what we call online writing. So you were actually going to where people were already at. There was already an audience there. You were engaging them in a public space, right, by commenting on some of that stuff, and then you were driving traffic back to your platform. Is that safe to say?
Well, it was actually kind of the opposite. I was creating content on my own platform, so I had my own blog, and I did a lot of I think they're called like backlinks, where I would feature a company's product. I would get engagement on that product they were doing, and they would actually share or reshare on a platform that I was helping to promote their product. A lot of them were smaller companies. They weren't like these massive like Levi's or Carhartt. They're just like small up and coming companies. So the sharing, it was like I was tapping into their audiences too, which was super helpful because then people that were interested and had noticed their product on their page were like, oh, there's a really cool blog happening over here that has other products that I might like. Let me go check that out. So we started just gaining more traction there.
So one of the things that I like about that too, though, was like you kind of had these channel partners already. So like you were kind of creating this content that they were actually able to benefit from, and so it was like working for them to kind of take advantage of that and funnel traffic to you, because you're
Yeah.
featuring their products.
Yeah, and then I had an audience that I was building on my end, so it was kind of like a win-win for everyone. Um, it's similar to a lot of blogs that are out there now that if you think of on YouTube, YouTube's like the new place. it's not so much a blog, but it's vlogging or video content. Um, you'll see a lot of these influencers that are sharing just their experience with the product. And if it's like electronics, they'll do different cell phone reviews and whatnot. Those cell phone companies eventually notice that they're gaining engagement on their product, that they'll send them products to review. Same similar thing happened to me where I was just organically picking product out in the world of the web and putting it on that site. And they started to notice that I was bringing them in followers or bringing them in engagement. And then they would be more interested in me talking more about their products over time. And it was a snowball effect. It happened with a lot of different companies. But I really tried to stay transparent, and I was, it didn't become a place where I was just doing it because they were sending me product. I actually genuinely wanted to do an honest review of their stuff.
How long did it take for you to really get eyes on your blog? Because I know a lot of times it's like, oh, I want to start something, I want to get this audience, and then you're writing, and then people expect like an audience like a week later, but like no one's tuning in, no one's listening. How long did it
Yeah.
take before you were like, man, like I really have an audience?
Yeah, I think I realized that probably 6, 7 months into it. It took a while, but I made sure that I was posting consistent content every single day, regardless of if anyone was looking or not. I just wanted to put stuff out there. Um, I almost knew in the back of my head that no one was looking at it, but I just kept it consistent. And I think through SEO, as you write this content, it starts driving pretty naturally up into the ranks when people are searching for things. So if there was a motorcyclist that was like, I need new denim, and he searched like good denim for motorcyclists, and that was something that I actually posted, that would come up there in that search pretty organically. And I think because I had such a niche market too, those things that they were particularly looking for, it wasn't like I was trying to compete with these massive blogs that had the money to put into SEO. Um, that niche market was actually what helped me get eyes on my content.
You started this back in like 2012, 2013 when you were doing this. How
Yeah.
different would you approach it today?
I think I'd focus more on video content, and we never really had influencer marketing back then. It was really just everyone that was a blogger was an influencer. If you had a blog, you were the influence. Um, we didn't have these influencers that you could partner with to promote products. So I probably would have taken advantage of that when I had shifted into my own product. And then, yeah, I would have focused more on video content because I think that that's super important, and they can have a visual of like what things actually look like, and you're kind of doing this video review of things. It's cool and interactive. I would have definitely focused more on that stuff.
Now, when you were doing this too, you were focused. One thing I want to like our listeners to tune in and see is that on the first thing was you were focused on blogs. So you were writing, right? You weren't
Right.
shooting videos, you weren't recording podcasts, right? You had your one medium that you were using, which was the blog. And then you also had the channel, which we were using, which is the blog itself that you were posting it, right? So
Yep.
one of the things I want everybody to tune in today and hear of like when you're trying to build out your audience, it makes sense to mainly pick one medium initially and then one channel to get that content out. Because a lot of times, you know, we can be overwhelmed, right? You're trying to post on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, etc., and you're trying to produce videos and podcasts and blog, etc., versus just saying, okay, hey, I'm going to be Jameson and I'm going to post this content every single day on this blog for 7 months straight. And then over time, that's that drip campaign. And then that's kind of how you're able to build that audience.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about the success you had once you did launch a physical store, and also when you actually were able to monetize your blog in the first place?
Yeah, I think the timeline is that I was able to monetize it because I was creating so much content. Then I was now creating revenue from ads on my site. It was something that I was super against for the longest time, but I eventually saw the value in it, and I ended up finding an ad partner that was able to put ads on the site that was relevant to my viewers. So it was the same product that I was already reviewing. So it looked pretty natural. And from then, I actually started an e-commerce platform before I went into brick and mortar. So the products that I was featuring in the store, what I did was I'd reach out to the companies that I was already doing reviews on, and I was like, "Hey, I'm opening this e-commerce store. Are you guys interested in putting some products on this on the site? It can be drop shipping, I could have inventory, whatever you need, but I think that I've got the audience that are really into what you guys are doing. Now that they can read the blog post at the very end, now there's a button where they can go buy it." So I thought that that was the next step in it, rather than kind of pointing out to their website and they kind of get lost in a mix of things. Now it's very particular on one product, and I can put a buy button and then they can buy it. From there, I saw success because I started getting products in this e-commerce store that was selling out, and they were buying it. And I'm like, okay, I really need to shift into not only making my own product, but wouldn't it be cool to have a physical store with all this product that's housed in it, where now it's from a digital world that people are used to coming to the site and reading things, they can go and touch it and feel it in a physical store. And I started to realize that audiences and this niche groups are super into, they're not just interested in the product itself, but they're interested in the whole experience and the lifestyle that comes with that product. So I'd actually have people that were just hanging around my store. They'd ride their motorcycles there, they'd drink coffee, they'd chat. And I wasn't even really worried about them purchasing a product or not, because they were really like creating this sense of community there. Um, and it eventually led to them like coming in and purchasing products. So that all made, it was great for me. But um, it was really about building that community, and it was very niche. It was small, but I think that word of mouth spreads really quickly, and it's like a snowball effect. So it was really like I created content, shifted into e-commerce platform, and then from there looked at brick and mortar.
Once you had the brick and mortar space going, you already had this content play, right? So you already had eyes on, but in the physical location where it was at, what were you doing to get an audience around the physical location itself? I know you already said people were hanging out, but were you like going to like biker bars? You know what I mean? Inviting
No, no,
people?
what I really did is because I had that digital audience, I'd focus on putting together these events, and similar to how Bunker Labs did it at the very beginning, where we had these bunker brews where people could connect and chat. I did something similar where I had these motorcycle rides that we'd have a meetup, and then we'd go ride to a specific location and then end up back at the shop, and then they could hang out or talk or whatever. And so, I thought that that was very successful because everyone got to bring their own motorcycle. It was a piece of their personality. They all had different things. They could chat, and then everyone would ride together. They'd ride to a specific location, and everyone enjoyed doing that. So I'd try to have these little get together events. I'd try to partner with other local, um, like a bar, for instance. We'd try to partner with them so that we could meet there. It was just like event driven too. It wasn't just like a digital entity. We really wanted it to be community based.
That's super smart, man. And I was actually writing a newsletter for the community today on the Transition Podcast about when you're putting together a go-to-market strategy. One simple thing to get started with are the meetups and the events, because it allows you to cultivate that community. And the whole concept I want people to understand about minimum viable audience is, I don't care if you got 3 people, right? You need a starting point, and then you can actually start to grow instead of just kind of being overwhelmed. So you just did a lot of smart stuff. You had started the newsletter, which was going. Then when you opened the physical location, you had organized events and meetups, which was great to get traction on the physical store. And so for people that are tuning in, as we kind of wrap up today, what general advice would you like to leave them with as they start to kind of build out their audiences to get eyes on their ventures?
Yeah, I think the best advice I could probably give, and because mine's similar to e-commerce and actual product, I think if we looked at a product overall, if you focus on niche audiences that makes your product unique to them, word of mouth really spreads very quickly. And I think that rather than focusing on the mass market, you focus on just a small portion of the market that would be super interested in the product that you're making. You're trying to solve something for them. It ends up working out. I mean, it's just, I would rather have 1,000 people super interested in my product than like 10,000 that are just like, it's comparable to this and that. Um, I would, yeah, just focus on that small market, create a product that you're solving a problem for them. I really didn't talk about too deeply about the actual product that I was making, but the products that I was actually making was relevant to motorcycle riders. Like all the small details that were in my physical product was pertaining to them. It was all about learning what they didn't like in other products and trying to make that in my own. So it was niche. I wouldn't expect anyone to walk into a Macy's and see my stuff and go, I really like that. But I did expect the motorcycle riders, particularly, to see that product and they're like, this is super useful for me as a motorcycle rider, So build a product that you think your niche audience will find value in, and they'll come. That's what it really comes down to. And then creating content around it is super helpful too.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, some of the most helpful content, like brands that I really identify with now, are brands that educate me on how to be better.
Right.
So like right now, I'm using Substack, which is an email platform, email marketing platform, right, that allows you to create content. They've got all these videos on how to be a better writer, and so then I like really appreciate that, because it's kind of helping me, and then naturally I'm going to kind of use their platform. But they're going after initially like just kind of writers that are already posting on blogs, etc., and just looking for a more efficient way. And then I think their plan is to grow that into other channels. So
yeah, for I think a software company, software based, or an app that you're trying to build, educational content is probably the best thing that you can do, because it really helps drive people to your product and why your product is better than the others, or how it's helping to solve an issue. So create that educational content, write blog posts, write videos, show people steps on why your product or software is helping to achieve that goal, and I think you'll do pretty well.
Perfect. Well, Jameson, you're a wealth of knowledge, man. I appreciate you sitting down with us, kind of sharing some of your backstory. For those that are tuning in, make sure you listen to Jameson's episode of the Transition Podcast, The Importance of Failing Forward. It was a great episode. I think it's one of our highest downloaded ones, to be honest, because he really kind of shares the ins and outs of the entrepreneurial journey. He's done the roller coaster, from
That's right.
the idea in your apartment to launching it, to getting success, and then having to start over. But it's all part of it. And man, he's a great wealth of knowledge, and we'll hyperlink it. So somebody said, can we hyperlink that to the hyperlink that in the show notes? What we're going to do now is I'm going to give a book recommendation for the week. And while I do that, if you go ahead and have any questions for either Jameson or I, go ahead and put it in the comments. But my book recommendation for this week is Niche Down: How to Become Legendary by Being Different, by one of my mentors, Christopher Lochhead, author of Play Bigger. And this book, I mean, it sounds so simple, and Jameson just said it too, niching down and create niche content, because when you niche down, it at least gives you a starting point, because when you try to go big, let's say I want to start a coffee company, and I want to service, the entire US, right? Well, it's like, well, who do I target? Who do I call? Whatever. But if I just kind of start in my local community, heck, even if it's a local neighborhood, and say, hey, I want to be the best coffee in this neighborhood, right? I already know where all the foot patterns of people that live here. I know the other businesses in the area, right? And then I can just kind of start building my brand around that. But we're all afraid to do it. But I feel like, Jameson, we always end up coming back to niching. It's like people tell us you go through all the accelerators and incubators in the world. They tell you to niche down. You're like, no, I'm leaving money on the table, blah, blah, blah. Then you get out there, you get beat up, and then you just start making like a list of like 5 to 10 people you can go after. And then you start to build your business around that. So he tells a story of some different companies in this book, little small businesses. I think there's one father and son company that just made these really cool like socks, right? And they were expensive, but they were fun, and people really loved them. And they just built their brand around making these really kind of fun and interesting, loud. I call them loud kind of socks. So, check it out. Niche Down: How to Become Legendary by Being Different. It's a short read. I think it's only like 100 pages. So if you can't read a 100-page book, you might not be fit to be an entrepreneur. But that's just my personal opinion. So check that out. Jameson, you got any book recommendations for our audiences? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh shoot. No, I don't right now. I'll post some later.
It's all good.
Most of my books are branding and art, like art design. So I mean, I would recommend one called Brand Spaces if you are someone actually trying to build an actual brick and mortar place. It's very inspirational on how to build an actual experiential marketing style space that like just brings general interest into your space. So I'd
Perfect.
recommend that.
And what was it called? What was it called again?
Brand Spaces.
Brand Spaces. Perfect. All right, y'all. As we close out for today, one thing I do want to recommend you all do is make sure you subscribe to the Transition podcast and newsletter on Substack. I've been publishing a newsletter and dropping a podcast at least once a week. So I really appreciate it if you subscribe to that. And one of the things I like about the newsletter is you can actually leave comments. So if there are particular topics you'd like me to cover, either on the podcast, on the newsletter, or office hours, leave a comment and let us know, because we love to hear from you all. I'd like to also acknowledge our sponsors for the day, which are the MetLife Foundation and the Gannett Foundation. The MetLife Foundation is committed to supporting veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. In addition, the foundation also provides mentorship and financial health resources to veterans and military spouses transitioning into the workforce. A Community Thrives is a program funded by the Gannett Foundation and part of the USA Today network, which invests in community building initiatives across the country with the goal of creating positive change through service to historically marginalized and under-resourced groups. Thank you again to the MetLife Foundation and the Gannett Foundation. And for all our listeners tuning in, again, we've got great resources for here at Bunker Labs. Just make sure you're checking the website, bunkerlabs.org, signing up for our newsletter and attending our events, either in person or virtual. As far as the podcast goes, I'm dropping a lot of content for y'all. This past week, I released an episode on how to build a world-class pitch deck with William Lutz from the New Jersey Innovation Institute. A pitch deck is great for whether you're raising capital or you're applying to pitch competitions to get some of that, to get some grant money. So check that podcast out. And I got a newsletter dropping today where I break down and give some show notes. I break down and give a little bit more notes on some of the context we covered on that episode. The how to build a world-class pitch deck is a little bit longer than usual, but it's such great content, man. And I wanted to get out there for you all. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in to Office Hours. Again, subscribe to the newsletter. I'll leave the link in the chat. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.